Okay, so anyone listening to this probably wants to get better at English, right? And I think it's safe to say that sifting through all the learn English fast stuff online can feel, well, overwhelming at times. But today we're going to do something a bit different. We've got this really interesting, really in-depth personal account from someone who actually went through the process of becoming fluent in English. You can almost think of it as a roadmap built on their own experiences on how they got there. So we're going to try to pull out the most important parts of that, the parts that really stuck with them. And hopefully that'll give you some really useful, actionable tips for your own English learning journey.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about looking at a personal account like this is that it cuts through a lot of the noise, A lot of the theoretical stuff, it goes straight to the practical stuff, the stuff that worked for them. We get to see the challenges they face, how they tackled them, and how their approach to learning changed over time. It's a pretty unique perspective, I think.
So let's dive in. The first thing our source talks about is the power of listening. They even talk about how listening to English stories actually helped them get over those early anxieties about the language.
That's such an interesting starting point. Think about it. Listening is like creating the first draft of your English skills. The more detailed and accurate that draft is, the stronger your final product will be. I mean, this person's experience really shows how even just listening passively builds those essential connections in your brain, connections that help with pronunciation and the natural flow of the language. It makes speaking and understanding later on a lot more intuitive.
For sure. And the advice is so simple, right? Just surround yourself with English audio every single day. Stories, songs, news, podcasts like this one even, anything that grabs your interest really. The main point is by actively using your ears, you're always feeding your brain new words, developing an ear for pronunciation, and picking up on how English is actually used in different situations.
And the best part is it's super accessible. You don't have to produce anything yourself, you just absorb. It's especially helpful for beginners who might be a bit intimidated by speaking or writing at first.
But of course, listening is only one part of the puzzle. Our source then goes on to emphasize how important it is to actually practice, and specifically, to practice speaking.
Right, that's where things go from theory to actual skills. You can listen all you want, but if you don't actively use the language, it's kind of like reading a cookbook over and over without ever cooking anything. You have to get in the kitchen, right? So actually speaking English every single day, even if you make mistakes, is incredibly helpful.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the fear of messing up is huge for so many people who are learning English.
Mm.
But what's great is that this person's experience shows us that mistakes are not something to be afraid of. They're actually essential. They're stepping stones. It's such a freeing way to look at it. And the encouragement to just speak, even if it feels awkward at first, is so important for making real progress.
Thinking back on how we learn any new skill, whether it's sports, playing an instrument, anything, it's all about repetition and actually doing it right. And speaking, even imperfectly, really reinforces what you've learned from listening and starts to build those pathways in your brain for more fluent speech.
Now, after speaking, the account talks about the value of reading. And one thing that really stood out was the suggestion to start simple, even with stuff like picture books. When you think about it, it totally makes sense.
It does. Picture books give you a visual, right? You can see what the words mean. It really helps with understanding, especially when you're just starting out. It's not just words floating around in your head. You actually see them connected to images.
And there's this really cool example. They learn new words just from reading a simple story about a lost cat. It just shows how even basic material can be full of new vocabulary. The takeaway here is pretty clear. Make reading a regular thing in whatever way works best for you.
Exactly. Reading is like listening's best friend. It gives you vocabulary, but in a visual way. Seeing those words on the page helps you recognize them later and helps you understand grammar and sentence structure better. Plus, you can read at your own pace. Go back and reread sections if you need to. It's all about control.
So we've got listening, speaking, and reading. Next up in our source's journey, the importance of writing and making those English skills stick.
Totally. When you write, you have to build those sentences yourself.
Mm.
Make choices about which words to use. It's way more deliberate than speaking, which is often more spontaneous. Starting with small writing tasks about everyday stuff, that's great advice, especially for beginners.
And it's something anyone can do, right? They talk about this habit of just jotting things down in a notebook about school, friends, dreams, just normal everyday things. It shows how easily writing can become a part of your routine. And they even talk about how they learned from the mistakes they made while writing.
Yeah, that's a feedback loop, right? When you see your writing, mistakes kind of jump out at you.
Mhm.
And if you're lucky enough to have someone who can correct those mistakes, that's like gold. It's a direct learning opportunity. But even without someone correcting you, writing can help you see where you might be struggling. Plus, as our source mentioned, seeing how your writing gets better over time, that's a huge confidence booster.
Now, for something a bit more laid back, but still incredibly effective according to our source, watching English videos.
I love that. Watching videos adds a whole other layer to immersion. Think about it. You've got visuals, you've got body language, you've got the whole context of the video. It can really boost your understanding even if you don't catch every single word.
And they suggest all kinds of content too. Cartoons, movies, TV shows. It makes it feel approachable, even fun, right?
Yeah.
And the way they explain how watching helps with pronunciation and vocabulary by linking the words to what you're seeing, it just clicks. There's even this funny story about learning from a cartoon about a dog.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes to show that learning doesn't have to be boring or super serious, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And never underestimate how powerful enjoyment is when it comes to learning. When you're genuinely interested in what you're watching, you pay more attention and you're more likely to remember what you learn. It just sticks.
So from watching on screen, we move to actually talking with others. The source highlights how beneficial it is to talk with people in English. It feels like a natural step after practicing speaking on your own, right?
It is. Conversation is where it's at, you know? It's where you put all those listening and speaking skills to the test. You have to think on your feet, adapt to different speaking styles. It's the real deal.
Right. They suggest practicing with English-speaking friends or even finding language partners online. And they tell this really cool story about how a friendship actually helped them learn English. They talked every day, and their friend would gently correct them when they made mistakes. It really highlights how powerful human connection can be when you're learning a language.
That instant feedback is gold. When you've got someone who can pinpoint your mistakes and guide you, it's such a natural way to improve.
Now, we all know learning a language isn't always easy. Our source talks about how crucial patience is. And honestly, I think every language learner needs to hear this.
You said it. It's a marathon, not a sprint. There will be times you hit a wall, times you get frustrated, times when it feels like you're not moving forward at all. Our source actually talks about feeling discouraged, but they kept going, and that's such an important reminder. Consistency and patience are key. They're your best friends in this journey.
It's so easy to forget that every little bit of progress counts. Right. They say that every step forward is progress, and it's so true. It's those little wins that keep you going.
It's all about having a growth mindset. You have to know that with effort and time, you can improve. Patience helps you stay committed, even when you hit bumps in the road.
Switching gears now to a more concrete tool, something that might seem a little old school in our world of instant translations. Our source talks about the importance of the dictionary.
You know, a good dictionary is so much more than just quick translations. You get in-depth definitions, accurate pronunciations, and super important real examples of how to use words in sentences. It's how you get a deeper understanding of a word, not just what it means, but how to actually use it.
It's true. They talk about carrying a dictionary around and looking up any words they didn't know.
Yeah.
It just shows that you have to be proactive about building your vocabulary. And the advice is so simple, right? Just have a dictionary handy.
Yeah.
Always.
It's about taking charge. It's about seeking out the meaning and understanding how to use those words.
Okay, so to add a little fun to the mix, our source talks about the importance of making learning enjoyable. And they specifically talk about games. What a cool way to break up those study routines.
Gamifying learning is so effective. It taps into our playful side, the part of us that loves challenges, even a little healthy competition. It just makes the whole process more engaging. It doesn't feel like work anymore.
Right. And they mentioned different types of games, too. Word games, puzzles, quizzes, something for everyone. And there's this fun story they share about playing a word game with friends and actually expanding their vocabulary without even realizing it.
Thanks.
It's a reminder that social interaction can be a really effective and fun way to learn.
When you're having fun, you're more motivated. Right, you want to spend more time learning. Games also take some of the pressure off. You're not as worried about making mistakes. It's more about the enjoyment of the game itself.
Okay, this next tip is a little more on the challenging side, but our source argues it's really rewarding for fluency. They call it thinking in English.
Yeah, that one's all about shifting those thoughts in your head from your native language to English. Our source actually mentions that at first, it takes effort. It's like translating everything in your mind.
But they also talk about how it gets easier with practice. Eventually, it becomes more natural. They even talk about reaching a point where thinking in English felt almost automatic. That's a huge accomplishment in my book.
It means the language has become a part of how you process the world. It's not just translating anymore, it's thinking in English in its own terms.
To keep things moving in the right direction, the source emphasizes how important it is to set clear goals. It's something we hear a lot, not just in language learning, but in life in general, right?
Absolutely. Goals give you a direction, a purpose. It's not just wandering around aimlessly, it's knowing where you want to go. And they suggest starting small. Maybe it's learning 5 new words a day or reading just 1 page of a book. It's about building momentum, step by step.
And they give some personal examples of how they did it, like setting a goal to learn 10 words a week or finish reading a whole book. And the feeling of pride they describe when they reach those goals, that's what it's all about. It's about breaking those big, scary goals down into smaller, more manageable pieces.
And just as important, it's about revisiting and adjusting your goals as you go. What was super challenging at the beginning might become easier as you learn, right? So then you push yourself a bit further. You set a new, more ambitious goal.
Talking about looking back, our source also talks about how crucial review is. It's so easy to get caught up in learning new things, but going back and revisiting what you've already learned is super important if you want to remember it long term.
You're so right. Reviewing is like reinforcing what you've learned. It's like taking something from that short-term memory and putting it in the long-term memory bank. If you don't review, you risk forgetting everything you've worked so hard to learn.
They suggest some pretty practical ways to do it. Going back to your notes, rereading things you wrote earlier, listening to the same audio again. They even talk about how they used to review their notes every week and how it helped them remember things better.
It's like tending a garden, you know? You plant the seeds, but you don't just leave them. You got to water them, weed them. Review is like that. It's making sure those language skills are thriving, not just surviving.
Now, our source highlights something that's really important throughout this whole journey, a positive attitude. It's like having a secret weapon, something that can really keep you going.
So true. Language learning has its ups and downs. There will be times when you feel frustrated, maybe even like giving up. But a positive attitude gives you the strength to keep going. It helps you bounce back from setbacks.
They talk about how important it is to believe in yourself, to remember why you started learning English in the first place, and they even share a story about a time they almost quit, but their positive outlook helped them keep going.
It's about how you think about your ability to learn. If you believe you can do it, you're more likely to put in the effort to keep going when it gets tough.
And along with that positive attitude, our source talks about embracing your mistakes. It's a huge mental shift for a lot of people learning a new language.
For sure. It's about changing how you see mistakes, not as failures, but as opportunities to learn. It's feedback, showing you what you need to work on.
They talk about how they actively tried not to be afraid of making mistakes. And their own experience shows that they actually learned and improved because of those mistakes. The whole idea that our mistakes are their greatest teachers is really powerful.
It's a total growth mindset. You're not limited by your mistakes. You learn from them, and you use them to get better.
And I think this next point goes hand in hand with that positive attitude. Our source talks about genuinely enjoying the journey of learning English.
It's such a crucial element. When you find joy in the process of learning, it stops feeling like a chore, right? It becomes something you want to do, not something you have to do. It fuels your motivation, makes you more engaged, and it just makes the whole thing so much more sustainable in the long run.
They talk about how much they enjoyed learning, about finding new words, understanding stories, just the whole process. The advice to actively seek out the fun in learning is really smart.
Absolutely. Think about times when you learned something you were passionate about. It felt easy, right? It flowed. That's what happens when you find the joy in learning English.
So, shifting gears a bit, our source talks about the importance of the environment you create for yourself, the idea of surrounding yourself with English.
Immersion, right? It's about creating a space where you're constantly exposed to English in different forms. It's like building on what you learn through studying by just living and breathing the language.
They give some really practical examples too. Listening to English music, watching English movies and TV shows, paying attention to English signs and labels, even something as simple as changing your phone's language settings. They actually talk about changing their phone language and how much it helped them learn. It's amazing how small changes like that can make a difference.
Exactly. It's about making English a natural part of your everyday life. You're constantly picking up new things, absorbing the language without even realizing it.
Now, for a technique that might seem really basic, but is so powerful, according to our source, the value of repetition.
Repetition is how we memorize. Think about it. Going over those new words and phrases over and over again, it's like building stronger pathways in your brain, making those words and phrases easier to access when you need them.
They even talk about this habit of repeating new words aloud every single day until they just became a natural part of their vocabulary.
It's all about engaging with the material, reinforcing your understanding through practice. Repetition.
To avoid getting stuck in a rut, our source circles back to the idea of making learning fun. This time, they talk about singing English songs and writing stories.
I love that. It's engaging different parts of your brain. Think about it. Singing helps with rhythm and intonation, and writing stories forces you to use those new words and grammar rules you've learned. It's creative, it's practical, and it's fun.
They give some great examples, too, like how they used to sing English songs every morning and make up silly stories using new words they learned. The message is clear. Find what makes learning fun for you.
Personalization is key here. What works for one person might not work for another. The trick is to find those activities that you actually enjoy doing. That's how you'll stay motivated and engaged in the long run.
Now, here's a tip that's all about putting your knowledge into action right away, applying new words and phrases as soon as you learn them.
Exactly. Using new vocabulary and grammar immediately, it cements them in your mind. You move from just knowing a word to actually using it.
They even give a specific example. They learned the word beautiful, and they made a conscious effort to use it as much as possible in different ways to help them remember it.
It's about making that connection between learning and applying. It's about moving from theory to practice.
But even though it's important to use what you learn right away, it's also important to be patient, to take your time, as our source reminds us.
So important. Learning a language isn't a race, it's a journey, and it takes time. Trying to rush things often leads to frustration and burnout. It's much better to be patient and give yourself the time you need to really understand and internalize what you're learning.
There's this really comforting line from the source that I love. They say that every little bit of learning is progress, even if it doesn't feel like you're moving super fast. It's a good reminder that every step counts.
It's about shifting your focus from reaching the finish line to enjoying the journey, right? Finding joy in the process makes it more sustainable and ultimately more effective.
Okay, another really practical tip from the source is to keep an English journal. What a great way to practice writing regularly while also reflecting on your experiences and tracking your progress over time.
A journal is a great way to practice writing without feeling pressured. It's your space. You get to write about whatever interests you. And it's amazing how quickly your writing can improve just by writing regularly in a journal.
They talk about starting with really simple sentences and seeing a huge improvement over time. And that feeling of looking back and seeing how far you've come, that's a great motivator.
Totally. And a journal can also help you track your vocabulary growth, see where you might need to focus your efforts.
Now, something else that might seem obvious but is super important, asking questions. It sounds simple, but so many language learners are hesitant to ask when they're confused.
Asking questions is a sign of a good learner, you know. It means you're engaged, you want to understand. And remember, there's no such thing as a stupid question when you're learning something new.
The source talks about making it a habit to ask tons of questions, and it really helped them understand things better. So, yeah, don't hold back on those questions. They're how you learn.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your learning. It's about seeking out the information you need to get better.
Let's be honest, though. Learning a language isn't always a walk in the park. Our source acknowledges that everyone gets frustrated sometimes.
It's normal, right? Feeling tired, frustrated, even a little discouraged, those are all part of the process. The trick is not to let those feelings stop you. It's about having healthy ways to deal with them.
The advice they offer is pretty simple. Take a break. When you're feeling overwhelmed, step away, recharge, and come back to it later. It's such a simple yet important way to prevent burnout.
Yeah, your brain needs time to process, to rest. When you come back, you're fresh, ready to learn again.
On a more positive note, our source reminds us how important it is to celebrate our progress, even the little wins.
Oh, yeah. Celebrating those small accomplishments, like learning a new word or understanding a tricky sentence, that's huge. It's positive reinforcement. It makes you feel good, keeps you going.
They even suggest rewarding yourself when you reach a goal. And they give some personal examples of how they did it.
It's about making that connection between effort and reward. It's about celebrating your achievements and making the whole process more enjoyable.
Learning with other people can be incredibly beneficial too, as our source points out.
It's true. Studying with friends or in a group creates the support system, right? And you learn from each other, practice together, and encourage each other. It can make a big difference.
They share a cool story about studying with a friend who is also learning English and how much it helped them both. So yeah, if you thrive in a social setting, find a study buddy.
Plus, there's something about shared accountability, right? Knowing someone else is on this journey with you, it helps you stay on track.
Here's a self-assessment tip that our source found really helpful. Listening to yourself speak English.
Recording yourself speaking and then listening back, it's a great way to pinpoint areas where you can improve. Things like pronunciation, intonation, even just how smoothly you speak. It's like getting an outsider's perspective on your own speech.
They actually talk about how awkward it felt at first, but how valuable it was to hear themselves and then work on those areas that needed improvement. It's a really proactive way to refine your speaking skills.
It helps you become more aware of your own speech patterns, those little habits you might not even realize you have.
It's so easy to compare ourselves to others, but our source advises against it.
Right. Everyone learns at their own pace. We all start at different points with different strengths and weaknesses. Comparing yourself to others can lead to feeling inadequate or discouraged, which is the last thing you need when you're trying to learn something new.
Exactly. They emphasize focusing on your own progress, on your own achievements.
It's your journey. It's about celebrating your own individual wins and not getting caught up in what everyone else is doing.
To spice things up, our source encourages us to be creative in our approach to learning.
Absolutely. Using your imagination makes things more memorable, more enjoyable. It's about finding different ways to process and retain information. So get creative.
They give examples of how they use drawing and poetry to help them learn. They draw pictures to represent new words or write poems in English to practice.
It's about connecting with the language on a deeper level, using different senses, making it more personal and engaging.
Being organized is another important element that our source emphasizes.
Organization is key, especially when you're learning a language. It's about having a system so you don't feel overwhelmed. Taking good notes, keeping vocabulary lists, having a study schedule, it helps you stay focused and track your progress.
They talk about their own habit of taking detailed notes and tracking their vocabulary, and it clearly made a difference.
It's about creating a structure that supports your learning journey, a framework that keeps you on track and helps you manage everything you're learning.
Consistency is something we hear a lot about in language learning, and our source reiterates how important it is.
Consistency is all about doing a little bit each day, or at least regularly. It's way more effective than trying to cram a lot in at once. It keeps things fresh and helps you build momentum over time.
They actually made it a point to study English every single day, even if it was just for a few minutes when they were busy.
It's about making it a habit. It's about weaving English into your everyday life, even if it's just for a few minutes at a time.
Now, I think this next tip is super important, especially because language learning can be challenging. Our source talks about being kind to yourself.
Oh, yeah. Self-compassion is so important. We all make mistakes. We all have days when we don't feel like studying. It's okay to give yourself a break.
They talk about learning to be patient and understanding with themselves, especially when they were frustrated, and it helped them so much.
It's about having a positive internal dialogue. It's about encouraging yourself, not beating yourself up when you stumble.
One learning tool that our source found particularly helpful is flashcards.
Flashcards are a classic for a reason. They're simple, portable, and they really work. They're great for learning new words and for review.
The source actually used to carry flashcards around with them, so they could review whenever they had a few minutes.
It's about using those spare moments. 5 minutes waiting in line, review some flashcards.
We talked earlier about surrounding yourself with English, but our source takes it a step further and encourages full immersion.
Full immersion is like taking it to the next level. It's about actively trying to think, speak, and write in English as much as possible.
They tried it themselves and found it incredibly beneficial. It accelerated their learning process because they were constantly using the language.
Exactly. It's about pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, making English a part of your daily life, not just something you study.
Our source highlights something else that's super important for learning: curiosity. It's a powerful motivator.
When you're curious, you want to learn more, you want to explore. And that makes the whole process more enjoyable, more rewarding.
They talk about how their own curiosity drove their learning. They were genuinely interested in the language and wanted to understand everything about it.
It's about fostering that sense of wonder, that desire to learn.
To make sure you're on the right track, our source recommends regularly reviewing your learning goals.
It's a good way to check in with yourself, to see how far you've come, and to make any adjustments to your learning plan if needed.
They actually made it a habit to review their goals every month, and they found it really helpful in staying focused.
It's about making sure your goals are still relevant, challenging, and aligned with where you want to go.
In today's digital world, online resources are everywhere. Our source emphasizes how valuable they can be for language learning.
Oh, totally. There are so many websites, apps, videos, all dedicated to helping people learn English. They offer interactive lessons, quizzes, games, everything.
Our source found those resources incredibly helpful. They talk about how fun and engaging they were and how much they learned from using them.
And the great thing about online resources is that they're so accessible. You can learn at your own pace, on your own time.
Our source also talks about something that's often overlooked in language learning: the importance of learning about the cultures of English-speaking countries.
Yeah, language and culture are intertwined. Understanding the culture gives you context, helps you understand the nuances of the language. It makes the whole experience richer, more meaningful.
They talk about how much they enjoyed learning about those cultures and how it actually made them a better English speaker because they understood the context better.
It's about going beyond just the words and grammar, about connecting with the people who speak the language and understanding their way of life.
Now, staying motivated over time can be a challenge. So our source revisits the importance of finding what motivates you personally.
Exactly. It's about understanding what keeps you going, what gives you that extra push to keep learning. Maybe it's setting rewards for yourself, maybe it's having clear goals, or maybe it's the encouragement of friends and family.
They talk about using self-rewards to stay motivated, and it clearly worked for them.
It's about personalizing your approach, finding what works for you, and using it to your advantage.
Learning a new language takes time, and our source reminds us how crucial patience is. It's a long-term commitment.
You're right. You're not going to become fluent overnight. There will be ups and downs, times when you feel like you're not making progress. It's all part of the process. Be patient. Give yourself time.
It's that growth mindset again, right? Believing in your ability to improve over time.
Exactly. Trust the process. Keep going, even when it's tough.
To improve your listening skills, our source suggests actively listening to speakers with different English accents.
Oh, that's so important. English is spoken all over the world, and there are so many different accents. Exposing yourself to those different accents will make you a more adaptable listener, able to understand people from different regions and backgrounds.
They actually made a conscious effort to listen to speakers from different English-speaking countries, and it really helped them.
It's like training your ears to adapt to the variations in the language.
At the end of the day, the most important thing is to be able to actually use the language in real situations, as our source reminds us.
Absolutely. Put those skills to work. Talk to people. Use English in your daily life.
They talk about using English when they traveled, and how beneficial it was to apply what they'd learned in a real-world setting.
It's about bridging the gap between theory and practice. It's about taking what you've learned in the classroom or from books and using it in the real world.
And because language is constantly evolving, our source encourages staying open to learning new things all the time.
Language is dynamic, right? New words are added all the time. Phrases change. Staying curious, being open to learning new things, that's how you keep growing.
They talk about how they're still learning, still adapting to the way the language is used.
It's a lifelong process. It's about staying curious and engaged.
To really make new vocabulary stick, the source suggests creating your own sentences using those new words.
Such a good tip. It's one thing to recognize a word, but it's another thing to actually use it correctly in a sentence.
They even mentioned how they'd make up silly or funny sentences to help them remember the words.
Anything that makes it more memorable, right?
We've talked about watching videos in general, but our source specifically recommends watching English TV shows as a fun and effective way to learn.
TV shows are great because they show you how English is used in everyday conversations, in different social settings. You pick up on idioms, slang, those little things that make your English sound more natural.
They talk about how much they learned from watching TV and how enjoyable it was. It's a great way to combine learning and entertainment.
Exactly. And it's so much more engaging than studying grammar rules in isolation, right? You see the language in action.
To avoid boredom and keep your learning journey fresh, the source encourages trying out new learning methods.
It's about experimenting. What works for one person might not work for another. Try different things. See what clicks for you.
They actually give examples of trying out different approaches, like listening to podcasts, writing stories, and using language exchange apps.
It's about finding what you enjoy, what keeps you motivated, and what helps you learn most effectively.
When you're faced with the task of learning a whole new language, it can feel really overwhelming. Our source suggests breaking things down, focusing on one thing at a time.
Totally. It's about taking it step by step, right? Instead of trying to tackle everything at once, focus on one specific skill or area.
They talk about focusing on different skills each day and how much it helped them manage everything.
It prevents burnout. It gives you the space to really focus on mastering one thing before moving on to the next. To make your learning more meaningful, our source advises connecting new language knowledge to your own life.
It's about making it personal, making it relevant to your own experiences. When you connect new words or grammar to things in your own life, it's easier to remember, easier to use. Okay, so anyone listening to this right now probably shares the same goal, right? You want to speak English well, maybe even fluently. But let's face it, sometimes all the advice online can be overwhelming, can it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a sea of information out there. Sometimes it's tough to know where to even begin.
Exactly. So today, we're doing something different. We're diving deep into one person's real-life English learning journey.
A kind of firsthand, boots on the ground account.
Precisely. And we'll be pulling out the most practical, memorable, and hopefully even some fun takeaways. Think of it as distilling their entire experience into actionable tips that you can apply to your own learning.
And that's something really powerful about these personal stories. They cut through all the theoretical stuff and show us what worked for a real person.
I agree. So let's get started. Right off the bat, our subject emphasizes the power of listening. In fact, they talk about how listening to English stories helped them overcome some initial anxieties about the language.
Interesting. It's like laying the groundwork, wouldn't you say?
Right. And they even point out that listening helps you internalize the natural sounds and rhythms of English, making speaking and understanding so much more intuitive later on.
Absolutely. It primes your brain for the language, even if you're not actively speaking yet. And the beauty of it is it's so accessible. Anyone can start listening to English stories, songs, news, podcasts.
Whatever grabs your attention, right? They're adamant about daily immersion. And it makes sense, doesn't it? By listening, you're constantly picking up new words, getting a feel for pronunciation, and absorbing how English is actually used.
It's like passively building a huge mental library of sounds and patterns.
Exactly. But of course, listening is just one piece of the puzzle. The next thing our subject stresses is the importance of actually practicing, speaking English out loud.
That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. You can listen all you want, but until you start actively using the language.
Right, it's like reading a cookbook without ever cooking a meal. And I love how they frame mistakes as essential to the learning process. They actually encourage making mistakes.
Makes sense, right? Think about any skill you've ever learned, be it playing a sport, a musical instrument, or, yes, even learning a language. You're going to make mistakes along the way.
Exactly. And the more you embrace that, the less intimidating it becomes to actually speak. They say that even if it feels awkward at first, speaking English daily, even just to yourself, is crucial.
I couldn't agree more. It reinforces what you've learned through listening and starts to build those essential pathways in your brain for fluency.
Now, alongside speaking, they also talk about the value of reading, and I found this part really interesting. They suggest starting with simple things, even picture books.
Picture books, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Right. But think about it. They provide visual context, which can be really helpful when you're starting out.
That makes a lot of sense, especially in the early stages. Having those visual cues can really solidify understanding.
Yeah, and they actually shared this great example about learning new words from a simple story about a lost cat. It just proves that even seemingly basic material can be rich with new vocabulary. The key, they say, is to make reading a regular part of your routine.
Makes sense. And it complements listening in a powerful way. Reading exposes you to new vocabulary in a different format, helps you see how sentences are structured, and lets you go at your own pace.
Now, after listening, speaking, and reading, we come to writing, which our subject emphasizes as a crucial step for solidifying language learning.
It forces you to actively construct sentences, right? To think about grammar and word choice in a more deliberate way.
Exactly. And they suggest starting small, maybe writing about your daily life. They actually talk about this habit they developed of writing in a notebook about school, friends, their dreams.
Really relatable stuff. Makes writing seem much less intimidating.
I think so. And of course, just like with speaking, they stress the importance of learning from mistakes.
Yeah, when you write, sometimes the errors become more obvious, right? Especially if you're getting feedback from someone.
Right. And even if you don't have someone correcting your work, The act of writing itself can show you where your understanding is shaky. And, as they mentioned, seeing your writing improve over time can be a huge confidence boost.
Absolutely. So we've got listening, speaking, reading, and writing covered. What's next on this journey?
Well, this is where things get a bit more fun. Our source next dives into the world of learning through watching English videos.
That's a great way to add another layer of immersion, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. And they recommend watching all kinds of things, cartoons, movies, TV shows.
Yeah.
The key is to find something you genuinely enjoy.
I like that. Learning should be fun, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. And they talk about how watching videos helps with pronunciation and vocabulary too. You're seeing the language come to life, hearing how words are pronounced, and picking up on those visual cues that add context.
And there's something about that visual element that can really make things stick in your memory. Like, they showed this funny anecdote about learning a new word from a cartoon about a dog.
It's amazing how much we can learn without even realizing it when we're entertained. Now, from watching, let's move on to a more interactive approach. Our source highlights the significant benefits of actually talking to other people in English.
That's where the real magic happens, right? Putting all those skills into practice.
Absolutely. And they suggest finding English-speaking friends or even language partners online. They share this heartwarming story about a friendship that blossomed while they were learning English. Through daily conversations and corrections, they both improved so much.
It just shows the power of human connection in language learning, doesn't it? You're not just learning words and grammar, you're learning how to interact, to build relationships.
Exactly. And that feedback, those real-time corrections, can be so valuable. But of course, language learning isn't always a walk in the park.
That's for sure. There are definitely going to be moments of frustration, times when progress feels slow.
Absolutely. And our source dedicates a whole section to the importance of patience.
Which is honestly such a critical message. You have to remember that learning a language takes time. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. They even talk about times when they felt discouraged, like they wanted to give up. But they persevered. And eventually, they started seeing real improvement.
It's those small victories, right? They keep you moving forward.
And they really emphasize that even the tiniest bit of progress is still progress. It's all adding up.
It's like building a house. You start with a single brick, and gradually it all comes together. Now let's move on to a tool that might seem a bit old-fashioned, but that our source champions as incredibly valuable: the dictionary.
In the age of Google Translate, it's easy to forget about the humble dictionary, isn't it?
It is. But our source argues that a good dictionary offers so much more than just a quick translation.
Oh, absolutely. You get those in-depth definitions, the correct pronunciation, and most importantly, examples of how words are used in actual sentences.
That context is everything, isn't it?
Definitely. And they talk about this habit of carrying a dictionary everywhere and looking up every unfamiliar word they encountered. It's about being proactive, about taking charge of your learning.
And it fosters this mindset of continuous learning. You're constantly expanding your vocabulary.
Now, to inject a bit of fun into the mix, our source suggests making learning enjoyable through games.
Games, that's a fantastic idea.
Right. And they recommend all kinds of games, word games, puzzles, quizzes.
Anything that gets you thinking in English and having fun at the same time.
Exactly. They talk about playing a word game with friends and how much their vocabulary grew just from that. It shows that learning doesn't have to be serious all the time.
Games tap into that natural desire to play, to compete, and when you're having fun, you're more likely to stick with it, right?
Okay, here's a tip that might sound a bit challenging at first. Thinking in English.
Now that's taking immersion to a whole new level.
Right. It's about switching that internal dialogue in your head, the one that's probably in your native language, to English.
And I can imagine that at first it feels really deliberate, almost like you're translating everything.
That's exactly what they say.
Yeah.
But they also mention that with practice, it becomes more and more natural until eventually you're thinking in English almost effortlessly.
Now that would be a game changer.
Wouldn't it? It's a sign that you're really starting to internalize the language. Now, to keep yourself on track and motivated, our source highlights the importance of setting clear goals.
Goals are crucial in any area of life, aren't they? They give you direction, something to aim for.
And they can be especially helpful in language learning, which can sometimes feel like a never-ending process.
Absolutely. And our source suggests starting with small, achievable goals. Like, instead of saying, I want to be fluent in a year, maybe try something like, I'm going to learn 5 new words every day.
Right. They even give some personal examples, like their initial goals of learning 10 words a week and reading a full book in English. And they talk about the sense of accomplishment they felt when they reached those milestones.
It's all about breaking down that larger, overwhelming goal into smaller, manageable steps.
Absolutely. And along the way, it's important to review what you've learned. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of learning new things, but without review, you're more likely to forget what you've learned.
It's like anything else, isn't it? If you don't use it, you lose it.
Exactly. And they suggest revisiting your notes, rereading things you've written, listening to audio content again. They actually talk about this habit of doing a weekly review of their notes, and they say it was huge for helping them retain information and see how much they'd learned.
It's like tending a garden. You have to water it and weed it regularly to keep it flourishing. Now, one thing that our source repeatedly emphasizes is the importance of having a positive attitude.
That's so important, isn't it? Language learning can be tough, and there are bound to be times when you feel frustrated or discouraged.
Absolutely. And in those moments, it's your attitude that will keep you going.
They talk about how important it is to believe in yourself, to remember why you started learning English in the first place. And they even share a story about a time when they felt like giving up, but then decided to push through with a positive mindset.
And that's what makes the difference, right? It's about recognizing those negative thoughts and choosing to focus on the positive instead.
Exactly. And it ties in perfectly with the next point they make, which is about embracing mistakes. So many learners are terrified of making mistakes, but our source sees them as essential.
As learning opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. They even encourage learners not to be afraid of making mistakes. They say those mistakes are often our best teachers.
It's about shifting your perspective, right? Seeing those mistakes not as failures, but as stepping stones on your path to fluency.
And I love this next point they make. It's about finding genuine enjoyment in the learning process.
Learning should be fun, shouldn't it?
It absolutely should. And they talk about how much they enjoyed every part of learning English, from discovering new words to finally understanding those complex stories they'd always wanted to read.
And when you're enjoying something, you're more likely to stick with it, aren't you?
Definitely. Now let's talk about the learning environment. Our source emphasizes the importance of surrounding yourself with English as much as possible.
Immersion, right. It's about making English a part of your everyday life.
Exactly. And they give so many practical tips like listening to English music, watching movies and TV shows, even changing the language settings on your phone.
And they share a story about how they changed their phone's language to English. And it actually made a difference in their learning.
It's about those small but consistent changes that add up over time.
And it makes the learning process feel less like studying and more like just living your life.
Absolutely. Now, here's another simple but powerful technique they recommend. Repetition.
Sounds almost too basic, doesn't it? But it really works.
It does. Think about how we learn anything new, whether it's a song or a dance move. We repeat it over and over again until it becomes second nature.
I guess that's why they talk about repeating new words every single day until they stuck.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be boring. They suggest doing things like singing English songs or even making up your own stories using new words.
That's a fun way to make it more creative, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They also emphasize the importance of using new words and phrases as soon as you learn them.
Putting them into practice right away. Makes sense. It's like taking them for a test drive.
They even give an example of how they would deliberately use the word beautiful in different contexts throughout the day just to help them remember it.
It's about making that active connection between learning and using the language.
Now, in contrast to that idea of immediate application, our source also stresses the importance of patience and taking your time. They remind learners that language learning isn't a race.
It's easy to get caught up in that, isn't it? Especially when you see others who seem to be progressing faster.
Definitely. But comparing yourself to others can be really demotivating.
And it's pointless, really. Everyone learns at their own pace.
Exactly. Our source had this realization that every little bit of learning adds up, even if it doesn't feel like you're making huge leaps.
It's those small steps, those consistent efforts that lead to fluency in the long run.
Now, another practical tip they recommend is keeping an English language journal.
A journal. That's a good one.
Right. It's a great way to practice writing regularly, to reflect on your learning, and to track your progress over time.
And it's a low-pressure environment, isn't it? You can write about anything you want.
They actually talk about how they started with just simple sentences, and gradually their writing became more and more fluent.
And being able to look back and see that progress can be incredibly motivating.
Absolutely. Okay, here's a tip that might seem obvious, but it's something that a lot of learners struggle with. asking questions.
You'd be surprised how many people are hesitant to ask questions, even when they're confused.
It's like they're afraid of looking silly or something.
But our source is adamant about this. They say there are no stupid questions when it comes to learning.
And they credit their willingness to ask questions with helping them gain a deeper understanding of the language.
Asking questions is a sign of an active learner, isn't it? It shows that you're engaged, that you want to learn.
And let's be honest, language learning can be frustrating at times. Our source doesn't shy away from that.
It's important to acknowledge that it's not all sunshine and roses.
Right. They talk about those times when they felt tired, discouraged, even tempted to give up.
And what did they recommend for dealing with those feelings?
Taking breaks. They say it's crucial to step away when you're feeling overwhelmed and come back to your studies with fresh energy.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes you just need to recharge your batteries.
Exactly. Now, on the flip side, they also talk about the importance of celebrating your progress, even those small wins.
It's easy to overlook those, isn't it? But they make a big difference.
They do. They say it's about acknowledging your efforts and rewarding yourself for your hard work.
It's like giving yourself a pat on the back and saying, hey, good job, keep going.
And they even suggest setting rewards for yourself when you reach certain milestones. It's a great way to stay motivated.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that really resonated with me was their emphasis on learning with others.
There's something special about that shared experience, isn't there?
Definitely. They talk about studying with a friend who was also learning English, and they both benefited so much from that shared journey. They could practice together, support each other, and learn from each other's mistakes.
It's like having a built-in accountability partner.
Exactly. Now, here's a tip that I think a lot of learners might shy away from: listening to yourself speak English.
It can be a bit cringeworthy, can't it?
It can be, but our source recommends recording yourself speaking and then listening back to it.
It can be a really eye-opening experience, and it allows you to pinpoint those areas where you can improve your pronunciation, your intonation, your overall fluency.
It's like having an outside perspective on your own speaking.
Exactly. And it might feel awkward at first, but they say it's worth pushing through that initial discomfort. Now, one thing that can really sabotage your learning is comparing yourself to others.
Oh, that's a recipe for discouragement.
Isn't it? Our source wisely advises against this. They say that everyone learns at their own pace, and what matters most is your own individual journey.
It's about focusing on your own progress, celebrating your own wins, and not getting caught up in what everyone else is doing.
Absolutely. Now, here's a fun tip. Be creative with your learning,
That's a good one. It keeps things fresh and interesting.
right? And they suggest doing things like drawing pictures to represent new words, writing poems or short stories in English, even composing little songs.
It's about engaging different parts of your brain, making the learning process more multisensory.
Exactly. They talk about how they would use drawing and poetry to help them remember new vocabulary and grammar rules, and they found it really effective.
It makes learning so much more enjoyable, too.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of making things easier, our source also stresses the importance of staying organized.
Organization is key, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It helps you keep track of everything, manage your time efficiently, and stay focused on your goals.
They talk about being meticulous with their notes, keeping vocabulary lists, and sticking to a study schedule. They say it was crucial for staying on top of their learning.
It's about creating a system that works for you, right?
And another key ingredient for success, consistency.
That's probably the most important thing, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's not about cramming in huge study sessions every now and then. It's about making English a regular part of your routine.
They actually made it a habit to study English every single day, even if it was just for a few minutes.
And they found that even those short, consistent bursts of learning added up over time.
It's about building that momentum, right?
Exactly. Now, language learning can be tough, and our source acknowledges that it's important to be kind to yourself throughout the process.
Self-compassion is so crucial, isn't it?
It is. They talk about learning to be gentle with themselves during those inevitable moments of frustration.
It's about recognizing that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's okay to feel discouraged sometimes, and to just keep going.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about a classic language learning tool, flashcards.
A tried and true method.
They're simple, but they work.
And they're great for learning new vocabulary.
Our source used them extensively. They even carried them around so they could review on the go.
It's about making the most of those small pockets of time.
Now, we've talked about surrounding yourself with English, but our source takes that a step further and recommends full immersion.
So not just listening to English music or watching movies, but actually trying to think, speak, and even write in English as much as possible.
Exactly. They talk about actively making an effort to use English in their everyday life, and they
Hmm.
say it really accelerated their learning,
It's like jumping into the deep end of the pool.
but in a good way. It forces you to use the language actively and to really push yourself.
And something that fuels that kind of immersion is curiosity.
Absolutely. Our source talks about how their curiosity about the English language and English-speaking cultures drove their learning.
When you're genuinely interested in something, it doesn't feel like work, does it?
Definitely. It becomes an adventure. Now, to make sure you're on track, they recommend regularly reviewing your goals.
So you can make adjustments along the way. Makes sense.
Right. They actually made it a habit to review their goals every month. They'd assess their progress, see if their goals were still relevant, and make any necessary changes.
It's about staying flexible and making sure your goals are serving you.
And in today's world, we have access to so many amazing online resources. Our source is a big proponent of using those to your advantage.
There are websites, apps, videos, you name it. And a lot of them are free.
They really enjoyed exploring different online resources, and they found them to be really interactive and engaging.
It's a great way to supplement your learning and to find something that fits your style.
Now, one thing that we often forget about is the connection between language and culture.
It's a two-way street, isn't it? Language shapes culture, and culture shapes language.
Exactly. And our source found that learning about English-speaking cultures actually enhanced their understanding of the language.
It's about seeing the bigger picture.
Right. Absolutely. And of course, staying motivated can be a challenge.
It can. It's a long journey, and there will be ups and downs.
They talk about the importance of finding your own personal motivators, whether it's setting rewards for yourself, having a clear goal in mind, or getting support from friends and family.
It's about knowing what keeps you going.
Exactly. And given how long it can take to become fluent in a new language, our source reemphasizes the importance of patience.
It's something that we need to hear over and over again, isn't it? It's so easy to get impatient.
It is. They remind learners that it's okay if progress isn't always linear.
There will be plateaus, there will be setbacks. It's about trusting the process and knowing that if you keep at it, you will get there.
Now, here's a tip for expanding your listening skills. Actively listen to speakers with different English accents.
That's a good one. It's easy to get stuck in a bubble listening to just one type of English.
Right. But the world is full of different accents, and our source encourages learners to expose themselves to as many as possible. They say it really helped them improve their comprehension.
It's about training your ear to understand English as it's spoken in all its diversity.
And of course, the ultimate test is using English in real-world situations.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. Our source talks about how they would actively seek out opportunities to use English even when traveling abroad.
It's about stepping outside of your comfort zone and putting your skills to the test.
And they found that the more they used English in real life, the more confident they became.
And confidence is key, isn't it? It allows you to speak more freely and to learn from your mistakes.
Absolutely. And just like language is constantly evolving, so too should our learning.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And our source emphasizes the importance of being open to new things, of embracing the fact that language is constantly changing.
They talk about continuously discovering new words, new phrases, new ways of expressing themselves.
It's about staying curious and adaptable.
Absolutely. And one way to really solidify your vocabulary is to make your own sentences with new words.
That's a great exercise. It forces you to think about how to use those words in context.
And our source actually made it a habit to do this. They would even try to come up with funny sentences just to make it more memorable.
It's about making the learning process your own.
Exactly. Now, we've talked about watching videos in general, but our source specifically mentions the value of watching English language TV shows.
TV shows can be so engaging, can't they? And they're a great way to learn how English is used in everyday conversations.
You pick up on slang, idioms, cultural references.
And you get to enjoy a good story at the same time. Our source actually credits watching English TV shows with helping them improve their listening and speaking skills.
It's like passive learning, but in a really enjoyable way.
Now, with so many different learning methods out there, our source encourages learners to experiment and find what works best for them.
Trying new things is so important, isn't it?
It is. It keeps things interesting and prevents you from getting stuck in a rut.
They actually talk about trying out all sorts of different methods. podcasts, writing stories, language exchange apps, and they found that each one had something unique to offer.
It's about discovering what resonates with you.
Absolutely. And when the task of learning English feels overwhelming, they suggest focusing on one thing at a time.
That's a great way to break things down and make it feel less daunting.
They talk about having specific days dedicated to certain skills, like one day for grammar, one day for vocabulary, and so on.
It's about creating a manageable learning plan. Now, here's a tip that I think is really important. Connect your learning to your own life.
It's about making it personal, relevant, and meaningful.
Exactly. They talk about how they would try to use new words in the context of their own daily life. Like if they learned the word sunny, they'd think about how it applied to the weather that day.
It's about making those connections, bridging the gap between learning and living.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about the importance of a positive attitude, but it's worth reiterating how crucial it is to believe in yourself.
Self-belief is everything, isn't it?
It is. They talk about how they gradually built their confidence over time, even when they made mistakes.
And they emphasize that everyone makes mistakes. It's part of the process.
Exactly. The key is to not let those mistakes define you and to celebrate those small successes along the way.
No matter how small they might seem.
Right. They talk about how they would find joy in learning even a single new word.
It's about appreciating those little victories, recognizing that every step forward is a step closer to fluency.
Now, here's another listening tip. Listen to English language radio.
It's a great way to get immersed in the sounds of the language, even if you don't understand everything at first.
Exactly. They talk about how they gradually started to pick up more and more from listening to the radio.
It's like training your ear to tune into the nuances of English.
And to make the learning process more fun, they suggest thinking of it as an adventure.
I love that analogy. It's so much more exciting than just thinking of it as studying.
Isn't it?
Mm.
They talk about how they would view new words as treasures to be discovered and new sentences as paths to explore.
It's about approaching learning with that sense of wonder and excitement.
Now, language learning apps can be a great tool, and our source revisits their value.
There are so many great apps out there.
They say that they really enjoyed using apps because they made learning feel more like a game. And a lot of them have really interactive features, quizzes, progress tracking.
It's a fun and engaging way to learn.
And remember, it's important to take breaks. We've touched on this before, but it's worth repeating.
Absolutely. Burnout is a real thing, and it can really sabotage your progress.
They made it a habit to schedule regular breaks into their study sessions.
It's about taking care of yourself, both physically and mentally.
Exactly. Now, visual aids can be really helpful for learning, and our source recommends using them whenever possible.
Things like pictures, videos, diagrams.
They say that visuals help them understand and remember things better.
It's about making the learning process more engaging and appealing to different learning styles.
And it's okay to go back to basics if you need to.
Sometimes you need to revisit those foundational concepts to make sure you have a solid understanding.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to start over if you need to. They even talk about times when they had to go back and review things they thought they already knew.
It's about recognizing that learning isn't always linear.
And rewards could be a great motivator.
It's about giving yourself something to look forward to when you reach a goal.
They actually use rewards quite a bit, and they found that it really helped them stay on track.
It's a great way to celebrate your progress and to keep yourself motivated.
And finally, they re-emphasize the importance of staying curious throughout your language learning journey.
Curiosity is the fuel that keeps us going.
Isn't it? They talk about how their curiosity kept them engaged and excited about learning.
It's about approaching language learning with that sense of wonder and a desire to discover new things.
And one last tip that they reiterate, listen to English language podcasts.
Podcasts are such a great resource.
They are. They're free, they're convenient, and they cover such a wide range of topics. Our source listened to a lot of podcasts, and they found it really helpful.
It's a great way to get exposure to natural spoken English.
And remember, it's important to use English in as many different ways as possible.
Reading, writing, speaking, listening,
Yeah.
it all works together.
Exactly. They found that the more they used English in different ways, the faster they progressed.
It's about finding a balance and making sure you're working on all aspects of the language.
And one last simple but effective tip, take notes.
It might seem obvious, but it's so easy to forget to do this.
They say that taking notes helped them remember information better and gave them a valuable resource to review later on.
It's about creating a record of your learning journey.
So after diving deep into this personal account, the takeaway is clear. Learning English is a journey. It takes effort, it takes strategy, and it takes a positive attitude.
It's like planting a garden. You nurture it with care, and over time, it blossoms into something beautiful.
Every little step, every new word, every sentence you learn contributes to that final picture.
And it's a journey that never really ends. There's always more to learn.